we start, I'd like to ask everyone to stand and then listen very carefully. What I'd like for you to do is turn around to the guy that's behind you and take his wallet out of his pocket and gift, and then give to the assembly here like you always wanted to. So shake somebody's hand and say you're glad to be here today. Thank you. And I would also caution us all that we know, you can be seated, but we know everything costs money, so maybe you would give a donation to this assembly for putting on such a fabulous gathering about the family, because the family is in distress and in trouble these days. You know, I saw a picture the other day of two guys standing outside a church. They're right in the front of the front church doors. They had their Bible under their arm and they was in their underwear. And one of them was saying to the other, "That was the very best sermon on giving I've ever heard." I want to thank you, Keith, Solomon, and James, for the wonderful talks that y'all have brought so far. It's been wonderful. And I'm giving a sermon today about legacy. And some of you have already heard this sermon. And so you can leave if you like. But they say repetition is the key to learning. So maybe if you would honor me by staying, well, I would appreciate that. But if you don't like to hear sermons more than once, well, blame it on Hector, because he's the one who asked me to give this. You know, our theme here is called Time Out. And indeed, our families, we all belong to a family, no matter how large or small it is. You're a part of a family now, or you'll be a part of a family later as you get married and as you have children. And I find from reading in the scriptures that the family was the first institution that Yahweh made on this earth. It was even before the assemblies. As goes our family, so goes the assembly, our community, and our nation. So one of the most important tools that we have as parents is to pass down a legacy to our children. And that is where us as fathers come in. And I'm going to speak a lot to the men today, because as the fathers go, so goes the families. And as the family goes, so goes the assemblies. For an example, if a father in the home doesn't attend services, no matter if the mother does, the children tend to do what the father does. And so the children are much more likely to not attend, and they'll ask, well, what's my father doing? And they'll go and be gravitated to whatever he's doing on that particular day. So men, I would say to you that Yahweh has ordained us to be the spiritual leaders of our home. Maybe you were raised in a non-religious home. Maybe you were raised in a place that didn't go and worship. The Bible was not taught or spoken of in your home. Maybe you're even uncomfortable in that role. But I would beg of you that you become comfortable in that role, that you become good in that role. And I challenge you to learn how to read the Bible. Take time with your families. And it's just been so well spoken without the TV, without the what do y'all call it? Not the smartphone, what is it? Stupid phone. There you go. If you don't know how to pray, learn how to pray. Learn to pray as a family. If you don't know how to do that, ask somebody. Dwayne mentioned that the people here that are serving this week have the yellow lanyards around their neck. Ask one of them for help. Or ask any of the elders, or ask someone next to you. How do you pray? How do you get to that next level? Some of us have been in the assemblies all of our lives. And obviously we can still improve. We know within our own heart that we can do more and do better than what we're doing. You know, in our culture, men have been marginalized. If you watch sitcoms, which I desperately don't, but the man is always the butt of the joke. And there's a plan there to split up and destroy the family. And the best way to do that is to destroy the men that lead those families. You know, we're the protectors of our home. James talked about that this morning. Many of the things that used to we didn't have to worry about, now we have to protect our homes from the electronic world. Our families are under attack. And our place as men and leaders in the home is under attack. And men, no matter what you hear, women do not want weak, immature, pitiful men. That's not something that women use to say, I want to marry a weak, immature, pitiful man. And so, if you're looking for a mate, if you're a young man, well, don't be that kind of person. Be a stand-up guy. And if you look in the books of Proverbs, it explains some of the things it takes to be a stand-up guy. And of course, it's not all in Proverbs, but take this book and make it part of your life. But you have been called and you have been chosen, and you have a responsibility to lead your family. And so I ask that you answer that call to leadership, to manhood, to be the person that your family desires you to be and needs you to be. And first, I would like to say that I'm giving this talk not because I'm the perfect father. You know, as Keith said, I have some memories of regret as well. You know, I think if people are honest, all of us have memories of regret. But these things need to be said regardless of my abilities as a father. And I'm very grateful to my wife and children for the many lessons that they have taught me. And believe it or not, I'm much wiser now than I was when I started. Joanne has been an excellent partner sharing in the grace of life. Vince Lombardi, one of my friends that I just met, said he was from Green Bay, so he might remember this guy. But he once said, perfection is impossible, but in the pursuit of it, you might just catch excellence. And so my hope and prayer is that we all, as fathers, might just catch that excellence and pass on a legacy to our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren of great excellence. And so I speak to those of us who have children and the young men that are not yet married, or maybe married without children so far. And I would encourage you to strive for excellence. Strive for the things that it takes to make strong homes and families. And you can start learning these things, and you must start learning these things way before you start having families. Psalms 128, verse 5 and 6 says, Yahweh bless you out of Zion, and may you see the good of Jerusalem all the days of your life. Yes, may you see your children's children, or your grandchildren, is what it's referring to. And we can go further, your great-grandchildren as well. And I've certainly been blessed. I have 32 grandchildren at this time, and I feel so very blessed in that. And I hope and desire that for every one of you, that y'all will experience that as well. I would point out to you that every man leaves a legacy for his children. And that doesn't leave out anyone if you have children. You will leave a legacy. And the question is, what kind of legacy will you leave them? And I have an example here that was brought out in a book that I read called The Legacy. And many of the things that I speak of today come from that book. And he gives an example. He says, a few years ago, a team of New York State sociologists attempted to calculate the influence of a father's life on his children and in the following generations of that man. In this study, they researched two men who lived in the same time in the mid-1700s. One was Max Jukes, the other Jonathan Edwards. The legacy that each of these men left their descendants stands as a study in contrast. Max Jukes was an unbeliever, a man of no principles. His wife also lived and died in unbelief. And what kind of lasting influence did he leave for his family? Among the 1,200 known descendants of Max Jukes were 440 lives of outright debauchery, 310 paupers and vagrants, 190 public prostitutes, 130 convicted criminals of all sorts. 100 of these were alcoholics. 60 were habitual thieves. 55 victims of impurity, and 7 murders. Research shows that not one of Jukes' descendants made a significant contribution to society. To the contrary, this notorious family collectively cost the state of New York $1,200,000. Of course, that was back when that was a lot of money. That was before the Congress had learned how to spend so well. So, in one way, that's a tremendous legacy, but it's the wrong kind of legacy. And so, by comparison, Jonathan Edwards, regarded as one of the most brilliant minds America ever produced. Edwards was a noted pastor and astute theologist. This renowned scholar was the instrument of Yahweh, was an instrument Yahweh used to bring about the Great Awakening in early America. Later, he served as president of Princeton College. And that was back when the Ivy League colleges, they were founded on Christian principles by men that were promoting views of the Bible much different from what it is today. But he came from a righteous heritage and married Sarah Pierpont, a woman of great faith. Together they sought to leave an entirely different kind of legacy. Among his male descendants were 300 clergymen, missionaries, or theological professors, 120 college professors, 110 lawyers, over 60 physicians, over 60 authors of good books, 30 judges, 14 presidents of universities, numerous giants in American industry, 3 U.S. congressmen, and 1 vice president of the United States. Now that's a legacy. And I recognize that this man was he was one of the best that our nation has produced. That was the thought of him. But I found out by doing a little research on him that he only lived 55 years. He died of smallpox. You might remember that sermon, one of his most famous, was Sinners in the Hand of an Angry God. And something else I found out about him, that he was fluent in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin by the age of 13. So we got a little ways to go if we're trying to keep up with Jonathan. But he also started his college years. He went to Yale at the age of 13 and graduated at the age of 17. And here I found this to be interesting, since I also had 11 children. He and Sarah had 11 children during that time. And you will find him in the encyclopedia, or if you prefer Wikipedia, Max Jukes, you probably won't find there. So we find that legacies, some are very constructive and some are very destructive. Exodus 20:5. For I, Yahweh your Elohim, am a jealous El, visiting the iniquities of the fathers upon the children to the 3rd and 4th generation of those who hate me, but showing mercy to thousands, to those who love me and keep my commandments. Proverbs 20:7. The righteous man walks in his integrity. His children are blessed after him. Psalms 127:3. Says, Lo, sons are a heritage from Yahweh, the fruit of the womb a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the sons of one's youth. Happy is the man who has his quiver full of them. He shall not be put to shame when he speaks with his enemies in the gates. And 128, blessed is everyone who fears Yahweh, who walks in his ways. You shall eat the fruit of the labor of your hands. You shall be happy, and it shall be well with you. Your wife will be like a fruitful vine within your home, and your children will be like olive shoots around your table. Lo, thus shall the man be blessed who fears Yahweh. Yahweh bless you from Zion. May you see the prosperity of Jerusalem all the days of your life. May you see your children's children. Peace be upon Israel. Max Jukes, Proverbs 14:12 might be a good one to apply to him. There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. Another example is one of the greatest ball players of all time, Mantle. He had four sons, of which he said, I always felt like I wasn't there for my kids. So right there, that was probably one of his main mistakes. He was not there for his children. While they were growing up, he was out bar hopping and living as a wayward husband. And when his sons became old enough, they became his drinking buddies. One son died at the age of 36 of a drug overdose. 2 others went through Betty Ford Center for alcoholism. In his later years, Mickey tried to change his life and actually was able to accomplish that. But it was too late to reverse the terrible legacy that he had left for his family. And the author noted that his place in baseball history is secure. but his legacy as a father is lost forever. Ephesians 5:15 says, "See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time." And you wonder about men like him, wouldn't they like to have a do-over? Something that they could go back and change what they've been and what they've done and have a do-over. All of us, from time to time, would like to have a do-over. One of the sad things about that is that you can't go back and change some things. But from this point forward, you can change a lot of things. One of the scriptures that might apply to this also says, "Do not get drunk with wine, for that is debauchery, but be filled with the Spirit." Mickey Mantle, he didn't follow this simple advice. Sometimes when we use the word legacy, financial inheritance, hard assets, multiple bank accounts, or blue chip stocks, maybe they come to mind. And this is a kind of legacy. Solomon wrote that a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. So a good man, that's something I think that is important, that whatever we've been given, we should take good care of. We should be good stewards of what Yahweh has given us to work with. And as it says here, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. And he leaves that open-ended as to how do you interpret that. Proverbs 19:14 says, "Houses and riches are an inheritance from fathers." So we should be careful with our property and possessions so that our children and our children's children will have an advantage. And we should, as the lady here on the second row said the other day, or one of the ladies are here, maybe I've forgotten which one, but she was speaking of ways to take stress off of the family is by financial responsibilities. But not even this type of legacy is always successfully passed down to our children. An example of that is Henry Fonda at his death had approximately $4 million to pass down to his heirs. Some of you younger people may not know who Henry Fonda was, but he was the father of Jane Fonda, which might not know who that is either. But he was a movie star, a lot of the old westerns, I think he was in some of them. But when he passed, and his heir, he had good tax planning, and he planned for his passing. And he only lost approximately $33,000 to taxes and settling costs, about 1% of what he had. On another stage, Elvis Presley left over $10 million to his family. But after taxes and settling his estate, he lost more than $7 million of that 10. And his heirs received only $2,700,000, or in the transfer, 73% was lost due to poor estate planning. And so, that shows again that when people are not doing what they should be doing, even in the money side of things, there's a great loss and great waste. And our children do not, when you pass something on, they're not reaping the full benefits of what you could have given them. But I would point out to us fathers that there's another kind of will that we're in the process of preparing. We should prepare a will so that the state don't do it for us whenever we pass. That's something that we should all do, have a will saying what we want happen to to our property when we pass. Sometimes that's not very fun to think about. Sometimes you have to answer funny questions when you prepare a will. But it's something that should be done. I did that recently, and I discovered that I had enough money to last the rest of my life unless I bought something. But there is another kind of will that we're in the process of preparing. And this will takes many more hours to prepare and will cost more than a few $100s to achieve. And the will that I'm talking about here resides deep within the heart of our children. The will to choose and their will to decide. Their will to sort out and select. And that's the will every father must prepare before it's too late. And I have spoken about passing our worldly possessions to our children. So let us consider a different kind of a legacy, one that money can't buy, but far more valuable than all the gold and the silver that the world has to offer. And I'm talking about a spiritual legacy, one that will enrich our children's lives, mold their character, and impact them with eternal destiny. A spiritual legacy is a legacy far superior to any other kind of legacy that you can pass on to your children. It's far superior than any other that you can pass on. What exactly is a spiritual legacy? And I have a definition for you. It is the deliberate transferring of spiritual riches and values from your life to your children's lives. And it's a deliberate transferring of spiritual values. And we all know that Yahweh has no grandchildren. Your children have to become sons and daughters of Yahweh for their own. It's been said that the job of being a father is one job that you begin with no experience, and once you figure it out, you're out of a job. But, guys, I would remind you that this is the greatest job that you can have, the job of being a dad. As I said, our theme here is time out. If you have younger children, cherish your time together, because they will be gone before you know it. And I speak of my oldest son, Josh, because he was my oldest son, and he left home when he was about 17. And I was not ready for him to go. It seemed like there was more things that I needed to teach him. Since then, my other children have also married and made lives of their own, and this is good. But each time, I wish that I'd had more time with them. But my time out was over. Now, the good news is that we can spend time with our grandchildren in the same way. And one person said that's why grandparents and grandchildren get along so well. They have a common enemy. Psalms 90 and 12 says, "So teach us to number our days, that we may present to thee a heart of wisdom." And Ephesians 5 and 16 also says, "Making the most of the time." So we must spend time with our children. And Deuteronomy 6 and 7 gives us a very good understanding of how that should be. It says, you shall teach them diligently. You're speaking of the commandments and the statutes. It said, you shall teach them diligently to your children. You shall talk of them when you sit in your houses, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You know, it sounds like he's talking about all the time, don't it? Everything that you do should be wrapped up with your children. They should be a part of what you're trying to accomplish. So we must invest time with our children. And something I would suggest, even if you have several children, take time with each one if you can, and spend time with just one-on-one time with them. It will pay great dividends. You know, on their birthday or on a special occasion, just one man said that what he always did would, he'd go down and he'd have a date with his daughters, or if it was a son, they didn't call it that. But with his daughters, he'd take them out for lunch or for ice cream. Just him and her. And, maybe it'd take an hour or 2 hours. But she recognized that he had special time just set aside for her or for him. And maybe you do something fishing or some other activity with your sons. Solomon told us this morning, it's nice when people just speak openly of things that happen in their home sometime. Rabbit stories. I'd never heard a rabbit story before. So that's a wonderful thing to understand. One of the things that we did with our children, or I did, was play Tyrannosaurus Rex. So you might wonder what that is, but that's when at night you turn all the lights off except one light in the kitchen, and that was base. The kids start from base, and I go hide anywhere down the hallway where there's a lot of rooms, And the further from the kitchen they get, the darker it is. And kids love to be scared to a point. And so you'd hide there, and as they walk down this hallway, they never knew what door you was going to jump out of and chase them all the way back to the kitchen. And I'm doing that even with my grandchildren now, so I don't know if I'm just stuck in the 60s or if I'm what, but Ephesians 6 and 4 says, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of Yahweh. And that's why our nation today is full of so many angry young men. Because their fathers did not discipline them and spend time with them and instruct them in the ways of Yahweh. Do what Keith suggested. Give them a special blessing. That will give them assurance that they are indeed very special. And I wish I'd read or understood this blessing concept earlier when my children were young and little. Because I think that is a great thing that you can do for your children, is give them a blessing each and every day. And you don't have to bless them even when they're at home. If you're not with your children, bless them some other part of the day. But think about them and bless them in Yahweh's eyes. Excuse me. I read a story about a busy father who took his young son on a fishing trip. And they fished and they talked and they fished and spent most of the day. And years later, the diaries were discovered and compared. And the father wrote in his journal, took my son fishing, another day wasted, I'm further behind at work. But in the son's diary, it said, spent the day with Dad. It was one of the greatest days of my life. And men, you only have one shot at being a dad, so make it count. And again, from Ephesians 5:15, it says, be careful how you walk, not as unwise men, but as wise. You might wonder, how did our country go downhill so fast? And men, the buck stops here. We stop leading our families in the right way that they should go. And I do believe that we all want to be better fathers. And children need stability and peace in the home. And one way to have a peaceful and secure home is that love must be real between a man and his wife before it can be real between a father and his children. Ephesians 5:25, husbands, love your wives. So men, the greatest thing that you can do for your children is to love their mother. And something that you ought to ask your wife and your children to do for you is to pray for you. You know, sometimes you've heard that expression, it gets lonely at the top. And I might be overemphasizing the leadership role here, but I don't think so. I think that that is something that we must take responsibility for. And so our wife and our children, if they pray for us, that can be a very lifting experience. And children need to see us loving our wife. And when they do, a very peculiar thing happens. They feel loved and secure as well. You know, we should live in close, this afternoon we're going to hear more about intimacy. But we should live in close intimacy with our wife. We must acquire a knowledge of her unique personality, her temperament, her strength, her weaknesses, and above all, her anger points. Your wife is a unique creature who is wonderfully different from any other woman Yahweh has ever made. Know her, study her, and love her accordingly. For example, some wives can be teased, others can't. Some require more listening time. Some are early risers, some are late nighters. Every husband must live intimately with his wife and become an expert on her unique personality and needs. Men, something we need to understand, that wives long to be intimate with us. When our hearts are filled with Yahweh's Spirit, then we're much more likely to be filled with the proper love of our wife. You know, the scriptures in the New Testament speak of not treating her harshly. And I've discovered that it's hard for us men to do. And I beg of you all to consider how we should treat our wives and strive to be better at communication, intimacy, respect, patience, etc. There's a lot of things there. If you read the 13th chapter of 1 Corinthians, it teaches you a lot about what we should do as far as taking care of our wives, or taking care of our families, or taking care of any relationship. Speaking of patience here, I saw this little cartoon. There was two women leaving the church. One says, "That's the greatest sermon on patience that I've heard in a while." And the second lady says, "Yeah, but he went 5 minutes over." So, I'm telling some of those Hector jokes that it's going to be next week before they get there, I've discovered that when I hurt, I want to be pampered. So don't you suppose that your wife would have that same thought? And when she's hurting, she wants to be pampered. So treat her as you would treat your own body. It's the Apostle Paul was very eloquent when he spoke of those things. I saw a Mother's Day card. It says, just for Mother's Day, relax, put up your feet, have some coffee, then have some tea and cake and read the paper. Watch TV, don't cook, don't clean, and don't wash, don't iron. Just do whatever makes you glad. Then you open up the card and it says, just for today, pretend that you're dad. Proverbs 18 says, when you find a wife, you find a good thing. But notice it also goes on from there, and it says, and obtains favor from Yahweh. So if you want to find favor from Yahweh, find yourself a good wife. If you're a young man, I'm speaking here. And also, he says in another place, be infatuated always with the wife of your youth. Sometimes we do things that are almost, as men, we do things that are kind of silly. You women may understand that already, but sometimes we don't understand that as well. And I was thinking back, and I'm going to get out on a limb here, but I want you guys to understand that I know each one of you may have done this too. I'm going to tell on myself, but I'm probably telling on you as well. Have you ever had an argument with your wife and you go to bed, you don't want to touch this girl. You don't even want to, so you get over there on your side of the bed and you're right on the very edge of, you're out there on the precipice. You're in danger of falling off. But you got your back to her. You're not going to have anything to do with her. Well, when you're that angry, usually you can't sleep. And so pretty soon it gets uncomfortable. Just the physical discomfort of you on the side of the bed right there. And you get to thinking, man, I wish I could turn over and look the other way. But you can't do that because you're not supposed to be looking that way. And I've always wondered, what is she thinking? And I went through that in my mind. I thought, I bet she's thinking, hey, this is great. I got 3/4 of the whole bed. Reba McEntire sang a song, The Greatest Man I Never Knew. And one of the lines in that song was the greatest, I think it started out, this song starts that way, the greatest man I never knew lived just down the hall. And the last verse goes like this. And the regret she sang of, evidently, was never really knowing her dad. The last verse says, he never spoke the words she wanted to hear. The greatest words I never heard, I guess I'll never hear. The man I thought could never die has been dead almost a year. He was good at business, but there was business left to do. He never said he loved me. Guess he thought I knew. So, would your children remember you with love or anger? Or were you fun to live with? Or were you a royal pain? That's something that we should, the 13th chapter of 2 Corinthians says to examine ourselves, to figure out who we are. Give some thought to who we really are down deep inside. The artistic genius of Norman Rockwell can capture the human emotion. And this picture here is called Breaking Home Ties. And as you look at it, it's a painting of a teenage boy, probably 18 or so, sitting on the running board of the family truck alongside his father. And the face of the young man is beaming, looking down the road, looking for the bus looking for his future. The bus that will take him away to college. You might notice on his suitcase he has some university sign there. His suitcase is packed. On his lap is his dog, and the dog looks sad as well. As I said, the genius of Norman Rockwell. His future is spread out before him, but the countenance of his father is somber. For the father, this is a sad farewell, the close of an era. He knows the time has come to say goodbye. And a part of his home and a part of his family is leaving. But more than that, a part of his heart. His time has run out. And he can only hope that he has built a ship strong enough to weather the coming storms that this young man will face. And as I said, that picture would probably be, I used about 300 words just now, but that picture is worth 1,000. Let us thank Yahweh for our righteous ancestors. If you were raised by righteous parents, then you were indeed blessed. And I was one of those blessed children growing up. I was indeed raised by wonderful, righteous people. But a good name in Proverbs 21, and I tell you all of that to say that, through all of that, those are the things that make good people, good, honest, I hope I'm not talking about myself here, people that actually know where they're going in life, is parents that are not afraid to discipline their children and explain to them properly, with wisdom, how they should act, and that there should be rules followed, because the world will teach you things if your parents don't teach you. A good name is better than great riches, and good favor is above silver and gold. So I would encourage you to take the name that you've been given, whatever that name is, whoever your parents have given you a name, take that name and try to make it shinier than you got it. Now, in my case, it's very difficult because my father was such an excellent person. But if you can make it better, then shine it off. And certainly don't leave that name with a scar on it worse than you received it. Make it better if you can. Never bring shame to a family name. That's the second commandment even. Do not bring shame upon Yahweh, our Elohim. If you were not blessed by having a wonderful, righteous father and mother, know that you can take your Heavenly Father as your father. You can have a father of integrity, of mercy, and of love. Let him be the one who gives you affirmation. We all need affirmation. We all need to be told that we're somebody special. Somebody believes in us. Somebody thinks highly of us. Our Heavenly Father, if at no other time on that blessed day, he will say, "Well done, thy good and faithful servant." And he goes on to say that I will make you rulers over many things. And so, as I said, if you have not been blessed with having a heritage and a legacy of a righteous parent or a father, you can start your own legacy. Change that legacy for your children. You can change it so that your children can pass it on to their children, and you can influence generations yet to come, generations yet unborn. And gentlemen, let's leave a legacy of righteousness. I won't read it now because I'm already running long. And Ephesians chapters 5 and 6 are things that are very good to read about that. A legacy of obedience, respect, gentleness, maturity. You know, there's a huge failure in our country today of people that are mature. Discipline, wisdom, responsibility, strength, mercy, and affirmation. And all those things are spoken of in those two chapters, 5 and 6 of Ephesians. Something that I would also impress on you, men, do not be afraid to take your rightful place as leader and provider for your family. You were given that place by Yahweh the Most High, so don't relinquish that easily. That is your place. Women, I would speak to you as well, and let your husband lead and support him in his leadership. You know, men are very simple. I didn't say simpletons. I said that we are simple. We are very simple. It don't take much to make us happy. Mostly your respect and support is usually what it takes. Wives, I would like to ask that you pray for us, even us that are not your husband. Pray for men in your assembly. And we need your guidance and wisdom. Many times, Joanne tells me things that I need to know. I didn't say she tells me things I want to hear. I said she tells me things that I need to know. But honor and respect us, and we will do anything for you. A kind and sincere word, it means the world. And I have a memory. It's one of those good memories. Some years ago, I went to bed and found a little gift. It was a little box of candy that Joanna left on my pillow. And she also left me a little card with these words. I've got it saved somewhere. I didn't tell Joanna I was going to say all this, so she may not be happy with me. But anyway, this is what the card said. To Farris, my love, I'm yours forever. These 7 little words to make someone feel like a king. Proverbs 19 says, houses and wealth are inherited from fathers, but a prudent wife is from Yahweh. Women, you are so special. I want you all to know that. So help us to be special and help us to not just be a one-talent guy. You know, Wendell Clausen in our assembly gave a sermon not long ago about the many talents that we have. And he read the parable. And when he finished, he said, we don't want to be known as the one-talent guy, you know. And that's exactly what I want us men to understand. We don't want to be a one-talent guy. We want to be multifaceted. People that are well-rounded and understand so we can take the grace of Yahweh and expand it out into the world so they understand how to live as well. So we are heirs to a promise. Our inheritance is of a soon-coming king, a kingdom, an everlasting home, life everlasting, life abundantly. And this is the legacy that we must instill in our children. Men, the greatest legacy that we can leave our children is faith in Yahweh and his Messiah, Yeshua. Long after we're gone, a righteous legacy and heritage will enrich the lives of our children, our grandchildren, and hopefully on and on for generations to come. Some men build careers, others erect empires. But the very rarest of men leave a spiritual legacy for his children. So I ask you men today, what are you leaving for your children? Thank you.